What is going on, everybody? PHX here. Thank you for stopping by, and in today's video we are going to be discussing about the First Descendant and its open beta that we've had this past week. So if you didn't know, the First Descendant had a beta that lasted for about 6 days or so, and it needless to say, it was actually pretty popular. There was a lot of streamers playing it. There was a lot of different content creators just trying to cover this game as much as possible. You've probably seen a lot of videos about first impressions about the beta, about what to expect, what people liked and what they didn't like. And so this video is kind of around the same thing, if not the same thing. This is just my impression of it. This is just my thoughts on it, my opinions on it. But I also wanted to go about and answer some few questions that have constantly been popping up throughout everybody's Twitch streams, and it's been very repetitive in the way of what questions were asked, what were answered, what to expect. And so I just kind of wanted to get down to the nitty-gritty of everything, and overall just kind of give you my general consensus on what the First Descendant is all about, what to expect from it, what can we expect from it, what do we know about it, and what don't we know about it. So first of all, let me just say, if you don't want to watch the video all the way through, that's completely fine. So I'll give you a little TLDR. And with that being said, for me, the First Descendant is an absolute blast. I absolutely had a great time playing the beta. Yes, it was a beta. Yes, it was very unstable. Yes, performance issues. But the content for the beta was it was there. It was very, very drastic. There was a lot of story content. There was a lot of very minimal end game content. You had 3 different types of activities to do, one of which was a survival activity where you go up against waves of enemies and you try and just last for 3 minutes per each wave. And then you had the defensive waves, the defensive part of it, where you protect a radar for however many waves that you can do, and that went up to 20. The survival went up to 10 waves, and it scaled. And the reason, a lot of people, if you watch people's Twitch streams or whatever, and the reason why people just kind of stop at a certain wave was because the scaling of the waves just didn't make absolute sense, especially for the player. Now, if you were in a group, you could definitely take on those waves by yourself or with that group, but beyond level 7 or even to level 10 or whatever like that. But at the same time, it just was more efficient to gather the resources that you needed to get in order to progress by unlocking your descendants. So overall, the TLDR, I absolutely loved it. I think I'm going to enjoy playing this game when it comes to full release. So yeah, it was an absolute blast to play. I loved the gunplay. The characters were a bit clunky here and there, but at the same time, they were a lot of fun to use, a lot of different variations to use. And yeah, I can't wait to see what's going to come of this game. So that is the TLDR. You by all means go ahead and leave the video if you want to. But to get into the depth of it, like I said, with the beta, it was very massive for it to be a beta. There was story content. You had different missions that ranged from Kingston to the Albanian Mountains to the Red Desert, and as you can see, each of these has a different path that you would take. So you would end up starting at one place, and then you would start here at this mission, then continue over here, and it filtered through. So it made it was very well developed, just constant. The progression just kept on going. You would unlock new camps, and then you would go to your next missions, and do those missions, and every 3 missions you'd come across a mini boss, and then for your final mission in the area you come across the main boss, and then you'd unlock the survival mode and the defensive mode, depending on which land you were in. So for the Albanian Mountains, you would come to here, go to your camp, and then you go to your missions, and then again it's a rinse and repeat process. So it was very repetitive nonetheless. So frankly, I can't really expect much out of a beta. Hopefully they do some tweaks here and there regarding the missions, kind of make it a little bit more, not as repetitive, but a little bit more in depth. But overall, like it was still a good grind, and the grind of the game was actually very easy, because you would have your descendant, whichever one that was. For me personally, my descendant that I picked first was Ajax. I absolutely love this guy. He was a blast to use. Very tanky, very defensive. All like his skills, his barrier. This gives me such Titan vibes from Destiny. So if you're into Destiny, you'll probably love playing Ajax, especially if you play Titan in Destiny. He just has a lot of similar traits and similar skills. But like while I was going through the main missions throughout the entirety of the beta, the leveling of the characters just were very smooth and very fast, very smooth, and it didn't feel too grindy. It was a grind to get to level 40, but it wasn't too grindy to where you felt like it was a complete slog, because you felt like you were progressing in every mission that you were doing. So that's pretty much it for the missions. But as you can see here, like this is the Red Desert. These are all the missions here, ending up at the final mission. An absolute blast. So I really enjoy doing the grind from level 1 to level 40 with your descendants. And like I stated before, after you reach the level 40, you would end up going into kind of like the end game, quote unquote, within the First Descendant. And like I said before, that came about to being your consecutive survival mission or your defensive mission. And with these, you would get the amorphous materials, which would then drop these little packs pretty much that you would eventually have to go to and then do the void intercept battles, whichever the amorphous pack was, that would be the intercept you would have to do for the Colossus. And getting into the actual void intercept battles, they were a lot of fun. Each one was very unique. Each one was very different. And they all had their specific niches that you would have to counter. So like with Stunning Beauty, she has an eye that pops up around, like she'll float in the air. There's an eye and you have to avoid the eye at all costs or you'll instantly wipe. With the Pyromaniac, he would light the whole place on fire and you would have to dodge everything that was set on fire. That way you could survive his attack, and then he would be immune for a little bit. And so it was a lot of interesting takes, going up all the way to the Frostwalker, who is an absolute beast. Frankly, I was able to beat him, but we used Glay during the time that Glay was extremely powerful for her being for her ultimate ability, but at the same time it was still a lot of fun. The Swamp Walker throwing poison, the Dead Bride throwing ice, making a huge ice dome and causing you to freeze if you invade it immediately. So each intercept battle was absolutely stunning. I could tell that a lot of work went into the intercept battles, and they were just a blast, an absolute blast to use. So let's see. We talked about the missions. We talked about the leveling up, the thoughts on that, the kind of the quote unquote endgame content that you had. So what about the weaponry? Well, there was a ton of weaponry, a ton of loot that you could just like devour within this beta. Every different weapon had different traits. Every different weapon had a unique purpose for your descendant, and there's still so much that we don't really know about these weapons because it's not really told to us throughout the beta. It's not really told to us throughout the tooltips or anything like that. Like for each different weapon, you've got piercing rounds, or you've got a burst, or you've got a wave. Those are like the top three, and frankly we don't really know exactly what type or what that even means really. A lot of people believe that the piercing and the wave and the burst all affect the void intercept some way, or they affect the enemies in some way. Maybe one is powerful than the other, maybe one isn't, who knows. But it was the grind to get the perfect rolls for your weapons was there. And it was just, I could tell it was just a taste of what's to come, especially within the actual game when it does get fully released. So personally, like, I would always run attack rifle, I'd always run an AR, and then I would always jump back and forth between an LMG or a shotgun or a scout rifle, just to try and figure out like what would benefit my playstyle better. Yeah, so those were the weapons, and then you had your gear, and then your gear was made up of defensive and max HP and max shield, and then going into depth of how you wanted to spec out your character and what your descendant like has before. So like with Sharon, she's more, if you take a look at her stats right here, she's more defensive. She does have good max HP, but her shield absolutely sucks. So maybe you want to spec more shield into her. That way you can survive a little bit more when you are with Sharon. Or if you're with Ajax, he already has a beast of a shield. His defensive is already high. Maybe you want to spec into max HP when his shield goes out. Or maybe you want to spec just a little bit more to defense, so that way you can tank a little bit more for your, when you are in groups going against those intercept battles or their survivals. So it all revolves around your gameplay style of how you want to spec out your descendant. You know, you don't have to do full defensive, you don't have to do full max HP, you can mix and match, which kind of makes it a little bit you know, a little bit good to use. At the same time, you definitely want to take a look at the descendant that you're running to see what's going to benefit you more in the long run. So went over the weapons, went over the gear. Going into the runes are a whole nother ball game, because there's just so many of them. I can't tell you how many runes I've like already received and upgraded and have gone through, just because like it was massive. And a lot of people say like this is a lot like Warframe, a lot of the way that it's all laid out. So pretty much this is like a Korean Warframe, because this is made by a Korean developer. With that, like, so there's a lot of room for like builds. There's a lot of ways that you might want to run your build. You could run full DPS, or you could kind of spec out to your skills, whichever that may be. So with Glacier, you know that she's a DPS type, a DPS descendant. Or with Bunny, you know, she has the speed, she has the skills. Blair, he's like a fire mage. Sharon, she's like a electric mage, you know. She uses electrocution, so you might want to spec around hers. So it's all the runes, your descendant, your skills. It all comes together one way or another. For me, I tried to spec her out to be a DPS rather than with her skills, but I would spec into skills by using her descendant runes. So, you know, I would use Fortitude when current HP is 50% or below, attack 2.3%, explosive attack 5.6%, and then MP conversion, max MP to skill cooldown to get my skills cool back faster, maximizing power, skill cooldown by 2.8%, and then skill attack. So it, like, as you can see, I'm kind of all over the place with Sharon and her descendant runes. So it's just, again, it's all like mix and match, trying to figure out what is going to benefit you in the long run when you are running these missions and when you are running your descendants in the actual game. But yeah, there's just so much, especially with the runes itself. Like, you can make a whole video on just the runes alone, just because there's so many of them. They each do different things. They all spec a different way, and it's just they get really, really in depth. So, I mean, that is the beta itself was, you know, I didn't know what to expect going into it. It was pretty interesting, because, you know, being completely honest, I never played Warframe. I've played Destiny, I've played Outriders, I've played The Division, and it all has similar traits. It all has similar like tendencies of all those games individually. But I guess this is more close to Warframe than if anything. And a lot of people say that this looks a lot better than Warframe, just because of, you know, what you're able to do within this game and what we've been able to experience within the beta. It was just, overall, it was just an absolute blast to use. I was like, it was a lot of fun. I'm very grateful that I was able to get into the beta itself. I signed up for it immediately, received a code, and bam, was good to go. And then I know a lot of people during Twitch, you know, watching Twitch streams, they would get their codes, they would get their betas. Unfortunately, this was PC only, so hopefully their next go around, they'll have consoles and maybe crossplay, which would be very good. That would be like super nice. Just the way that way, you know, everyone can kind of play together. You can play with your friends or whatnot. But as of right now, we don't know. There's a lot that we don't know about this game. We don't know when it's coming out. We don't know when it's going to be ready. And frankly, we don't know how far in development it actually is. It could be done with development and it could come out next month. It could be ways off and it could come out next year. It all depends on you know, where the publisher, where the developers are with the game itself. And overall, like, frankly, I would rather have them take their time on this game rather than rush a product just to meet a deadline, just to meet players' interest, because I think with the amount of positivity people have with this game, because there is a lot of positivity, you know, I think they're gonna go with the route of, you know, taking their time, making sure that the performance issues and everything are good to go, making sure that the content is there for the players. That way we're not stuck with another looter shooter that just has no content, is completely dry within like the first few weeks when it's released. But overall, guys, I mean, that's my consensus on the beta. I think it was a lot of fun. It was a good run. 6 days, played all 6 days, tried to get the Ultimate Epic Descendant, but unfortunately, just because of the drop rates and time and the amount of effort it would have taken to actually get all the pieces to make the Ultimate Descendant, you know, it was very grindy. So, but overall, I mean, other than that's it. That is the First Descendant in a nutshell. It was a blast. I can't wait for this game to actually come out. I highly recommend you give it a shot, even if you've never played Warframe before. And coming from someone who's never played Warframe but has heard about it, I highly recommend you try it, because it's very unique. It has that sensibility of being something that could actually satisfy the need for the genre of being a looter shooter for the time being. And so I definitely recommend it. I definitely think that you guys should go ahead, do whatever, you know, take a shot at it. If you like it, great. If you don't, great. But, you know, maybe you'll come to liking it, or maybe you won't. Who knows? But overall, guys, I mean, that is it. That is my consensus. And I really hope you enjoyed the video. I really hope you enjoyed the gameplay footage. And yeah, that's it. That's all I got. I thank you for taking the time to watch the video, and I'll see you guys around in the next video. Take care.